David pressed send. At 11:04 p.m. and 12 seconds, he realized what he had done. At 11:04 p.m. and 15 seconds, he tried to unsend it. It was already too late. In the time it takes to blink, in less time than it takes to draw a breath, 14 years of marriage, 2 children, a house with a garden that took 3 summers to get right, a life that 2 people had built from nothing, all of it cracked from a single tap of a thumb. This is that story, and it moves fast. Let us be precise about what the message said, because precision matters here. Because the exact words are the reason everything that followed happened the way it happened. David typed, "I cannot stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? I love you." He had meant to send it to Nadia. Nadia, 31 years old, works 2 floors below him in the same office building, has been the secret that David has been carrying for 2 years with the particular skill of a man who is good at compartmentalizing. Instead, he sent it to Carol. Carol, 42 years old, Sandra's best friend since university, the woman who had been a bridesmaid at David and Sandra's wedding 14 years ago, the woman who had held Sandra's hand in the delivery room for both children, the woman who came for dinner every second Sunday and knew where the spare key was kept, and had, over 14 years, become so woven into the fabric of David and Sandra's life that she was less a friend and more a permanent fixture. Carol, who had David's number saved under David, Sandra's husband. Carol's phone lit up at 11:04 p.m. She read the message. She read it again. She sat very still for approximately 4 seconds. And then she did 3 things in rapid succession. She screenshotted it. She called Sandra. And she said, when Sandra answered with the groggy confusion of a woman pulled from sleep, "Wake up. I need you to be awake for this." Sandra was 42 years old, and she had built a good life, not accidentally. She had chosen it, chosen David, chosen to build a home around him and their children, chosen to invest her days in the particular unglamorous work of keeping a family functioning. She was the kind of woman whose contribution was everywhere and nowhere, visible in results, invisible in effort. She loved David with the settled, unquestioning love of a woman who had stopped needing to think about it. He was simply there, her constant, her person, the one she reached for in the dark when something frightened her. She reached for her phone at 11:06 p.m. Carol's voice on the other end was doing something Sandra had never heard it do before, controlling itself very carefully, the way voices do when they are carrying something that could shatter the person on the other end. "I just got a text from David," Carol said. "It was not meant for me." Sandra sat up in bed. The bedroom was dark. Beside her, David's side of the bed, empty. He had said he was working late. He had said he would be home by midnight. He had said it the way he said everything lately. Smoothly, easily, with the particular fluency of a man who has been telling a parallel story for so long it has become effortless. "Read it to me," Sandra said. Carol read it. Sandra listened. The bedroom was very quiet. "Send me the screenshot," Sandra said. Her voice was completely steady. This was the thing about Sandra that David had perhaps always underestimated. The stillness that arrived in her when things became serious. The way she did not fall apart immediately, but went very, very quiet. The way her hands stopped shaking before her mind had even fully processed what was happening. The screenshot arrived. She looked at it for a long time. "I cannot stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? I love you." She counted the question marks she had been carrying for months. The small, nagging, easily explained away doubts that she had chosen not to examine too closely, because examining them would mean accepting something she was not ready to accept. The late nights, the new password on his phone, the way he sometimes laughed at a text and then put the phone face down without comment. The cologne he wore on days he said he was just going to the office. She had filed all of it under, "I trust my husband." She got out of bed. She went to the wardrobe. She found a suitcase, and she began to pack his things. David was sitting in his car in a parking lot 3 kilometers from home when he realized what he had done. He had been about to drive to Nadia's apartment. A Tuesday night visit. Routine now, built into the hidden architecture of his week, the way certain lies become structural once you have been telling them long enough. He looked at his sent messages. He looked at the name above the message. Carol, Sandra's friend. The blood left his face so quickly, he felt dizzy. He called Carol immediately. It rang twice. Carol, listen. That message was not, I know, Carol said. Her voice was like a door closing. I've already spoken to Sandra. The line went dead. David sat in that parking lot for 11 minutes. He knew, with the absolute certainty of a man whose worst moment has just arrived, that the life he had been living, both versions of it, was over. The only question now was what the wreckage looked like and how much of it could be salvaged. He started the car. He drove home. The house lights were on when he pulled into the driveway, all of them. Every room lit up at midnight, the house blazing in the dark street like something exposed, like something that could no longer afford to keep its lights dim. He sat in the driveway for a moment. Then he went inside. Sandra was in the kitchen, not crying, not screaming, standing at the counter with a cup of tea she wasn't drinking, wearing the expression of a woman who has had approximately 47 minutes to move through shock and arrive somewhere colder and more permanent. His suitcase was at the bottom of the stairs, packed, neatly, with the particular thoroughness of a woman who does everything properly, even this. David looked at the suitcase. He looked at Sandra. He opened his mouth to begin the sentence that men in his position always try to begin, the sentence that starts with, "Let me explain," or "It's not what you think," or "I can fix this." "Don't," Sandra said, one word, quiet as a held breath. "I don't want an explanation tonight. I want you to take that suitcase and go wherever you were going when you sent that message." "Sandra, the kids are asleep," she said, "and they will stay asleep, and tomorrow I will handle tomorrow. But tonight you are going to leave this house." David stood at the bottom of his stairs in his own home and felt, for the first time in 2 years of secrets, the full weight of what he had been doing, not the fear of being caught. He had felt that before. This was different. This was seeing Sandra's face, the face of a woman he had genuinely loved, still loved, in the complicated and ruinous way of people who destroy what they love. And understanding with perfect clarity that he had done this, not the text message, not the wrong number. Him. He had done this. One tap of a thumb had revealed it. But he had built it, brick by brick, choice by choice, for 2 years. He picked up the suitcase. He walked to the door. "Sandra," he said, at the threshold. She looked at him. "I'm sorry." She looked at him for a long moment, the way you look at something you are trying to memorize, or something you are trying to let go of. "I know," she said, and she closed the door. Nadia found out at 7 a.m. the next morning. Not from David. David's phone had been going to voicemail since midnight, a fact she had noted with the particular antenna of a woman who has been in a secret relationship long enough to know that silence from a married man usually means something has happened at home. She found out from a mutual colleague who had seen something on social media. Sandra had not made a public announcement. She was not that kind of woman. But Carol was furious on her behalf, and Carol had her own social media. By 7 a.m. the screenshot was circulating in the way that screenshots circulate, unstoppably, with the particular velocity of something that people cannot believe and therefore need to share immediately to confirm that it is real. "I cannot stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? I love you." Sent to the wrong person. The wrong person who happened to be the wife's best friend. Nadia sat at her desk that morning and understood that the version of the future she had been constructing, the one in which David eventually chose her, eventually left, eventually made the situation official, had just dissolved, not because she had been discovered, because David had been discovered. And discovered men do not leave their wives for the person they were discovered with. They beg. David was, at that exact moment, begging. Their names were Leah and Marcus, 16 and 13, old enough to understand, old enough to have already noticed, in the way that children always noticed, that something had been different about their father for a while. The distraction, the phone face down, the cologne on ordinary days. Children noticed everything. They simply love you too much to say so. Sandra sat them down that morning after David had gone. She was honest without being brutal. She gave them the truth in the version that a mother gives. Enough to understand, not enough to destroy. She told them their father had made a mistake, a serious one, that she and their father needed time to figure out what came next. Leah asked, "Is he coming back?" Sandra looked at her daughter, 16 years old, her father's eyes in her mother's face. "I don't know yet," Sandra said, and that honesty, that refusal to promise something she could not guarantee, was the most honest thing anyone had said in that house in 2 years. Marcus said nothing. He went to his room, and later that afternoon, Sandra found him sitting on the back steps of the house, in the garden that had taken 3 summers to get right, just sitting there looking at it. She sat beside him. They didn't speak. Sometimes, that is the only thing available. By midnight on Wednesday, exactly 24 hours after David pressed send, the following was true. David was sleeping in a hotel room, his suitcase open on the floor, his phone full of unanswered messages from people who had seen the screenshot and wanted to know if it was real. Nadia had requested a transfer to a different floor of the building. She would be gone by the end of the week. Carol was sitting in Sandra's kitchen, the way she had sat in Sandra's kitchen 100 times before, except that tonight the tea was stronger and nobody was laughing, and the silence between them was the particular silence of 2 women who have been friends long enough to not need to fill every moment with words. Sandra's bags were not packed. This was her house, her children's house. The garden she had watched grow over 3 summers was outside that window, and it was not going anywhere. And Sandra herself, Sandra was sitting at her kitchen table at midnight, 42 years old, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, looking at nothing in particular, thinking, not about what David had done. She had thought about that enough for one day. Thinking about what came next, about what she wanted, about who she was, separate from the role of wife, separate from the betrayal, separate from the screenshot and the suitcase and the conversation with the children. Who was Sandra? What did Sandra want her life to look like, starting from this moment? She didn't have the answers yet, but for the first time in 14 years, she was asking herself the questions. And somehow, in the wreckage of a Tuesday night, and a wrong number, and 24 hours that had dismantled everything, that felt like the beginning of something. David and Sandra did not immediately divorce. These things are rarely clean or immediate. There were children and a mortgage, and 14 years of shared history, and the complicated truth that betrayal and love are not always mutually exclusive, that people can do devastating things to people they genuinely care about. What happened between them after that night is their story to navigate. What we can say is this: 1 text message, 11 words, sent to the wrong name in a contact list at 11:04 p.m. on a Tuesday, and everything, every carefully maintained secret, every parallel life, every smoothly delivered excuse, arrived in Sandra's hands before she had even finished her first cup of morning tea. Technology has changed betrayal. It used to take years to unravel. It used to require investigations and confrontations and the slow accumulation of evidence. It used to give people time to hide. Now, 1 wrong tap, 3 seconds, and the truth, which has always been there, simply lands in the wrong inbox. David's wedding ring caught the light as he pressed send. He just wasn't looking at it.